I call this presentation College Skills 101, and it's a guide to being the best student you can be. And I created this because after a number of years of teaching, I realized that there are a lot of students who come to college who don't really have the skills or preparedness that they really need to be successful from the start. And so I wanted this presentation to inform students of the skills that are necessary, the basics that will help them move forward, help them understand how to be successful students so that they can do their best, because the best is all that's expected of a student. You know, it's not that you be a straight A student, it's that you do the best quality work that you're capable of doing, and the way that you do that first is understanding what's expected of you in the college classes and just at college in general when you're taking courses. You know, and I think this will assist students who are coming from a variety of backgrounds, because some students come from high schools where maybe you had really good training for college preparation. There was a lot of focus on that, especially maybe in your junior and senior years of high school. This could be a refresher to you. Some students are coming from high schools that maybe didn't focus on that, or maybe you were on a different learning track at your high school that was preparing you for something else, and you've made a decision to switch and come into college, and this will help give you the information and skills you need as well. Also, I have a lot of students who come back to school after a number of years being away. You know, perhaps you graduated high school and went directly into the workforce, and you've worked there a number of years, and now you're coming back to school hoping to advance yourself in the job that you're in, or open your avenues to new opportunities and careers. The same thing, maybe you graduated high school, took a few semesters of college, and then went to the workforce, and now you're coming back and you just need a refresher as well. So I think for any student, this will be helpful and useful. And I want to go over some of the basics of how to be a successful student, how to be the best student that you can be. And when I was trying to develop this presentation, you know, I've had a lot of ideas that I've jotted down over the years of things I wanted to discuss. I know it's hard to remember lists, and if I give a 20-minute presentation, you may not remember every single detail. But I try to break it all down into four components. And I think if you can remember the words for the four components, because I've tried to have them in a way, they're called a mnemonic, and a device that you can remember it in some format. I think you can remember these four components, then it should help you along the way and remember at least some of the points that I go over. And of course, the presentation will be here to review at any time. But what I came up with was what I'll call the 4 P's of college success. And I started all the words with P, that way that you can remember, okay, what was this P, what was that P? You know, if you can remember these 4 P's, then I think you can possibly keep an idea in your mind of what the expectations are. So the 4 P's of college success: preparedness, professionalism, promptness, and performance. Try to commit those 4 terms to memory. And if I think, what are my expectations? If you can remember those 4 things, I think you'll be on a good track. And you can probably remember sub-points that I'm going to discuss. Okay? So the first one I want to discuss is preparedness. And I think this is possibly the biggest skill that students lack coming into college. They're not as prepared as they should be for what the expectations are, because we're not in high school anymore. You know, in high school, you probably had a high school teacher who every day reminded you, okay, we have an assignment due tomorrow. Don't forget about what's due a few weeks from now. Don't forget what's due down the road. And somebody was always there sort of nurturing or you know, parenting you in some way. And that doesn't happen at college. You know, in college, there's information that's provided, and then the expectation is, okay, it's been said once, it may be mentioned one more time in the classroom. After that, it's up to you to be the responsible adult. You're an adult now. These people coming from high school into college are considered to be an adult. The information is up to you to keep, to maintain, to understand, and if you don't know, then you ask the questions that are needed. Okay? So the first thing I would say is, anytime you're taking a class, know the expectations for the course when you're going in. You know, if you're taking a math class, that math class is not going to be the same style of math class as you took when you were in high school. There are going to be different expectations, different requirements. The English 101 class, 1101 class that you walk into the first day of college life is going to be entirely different from the high school class that you took, the high school English class you took your senior year. I guarantee you're going to learn new styles of writing. But in order to understand what the expectations are of you for that course, you need to read the syllabus. That's the primary document that you need in your hand, and that's why the first day of class, the instructor typically hands out your syllabus or makes it available and spends probably a good amount of time going over it, because that syllabus is the contract that you have with the course and with your instructor. And that lists all of your rights and privileges and all of the requirements and expectations that are given for the class. Be sure that you've read that carefully. And I know it seems overwhelming that first week of class. You may be taking 4 classes, and every syllabus from every class may be anywhere between 4 and 10 pages long, depending on the materials that are included in the syllabus. But definitely sit down and take the time to read the syllabus. The syllabus will explain the weights of assignments. If you have an essay due at the end of the semester and it counts 40% of your course grade, you want to be aware of that early on in the semester, so that you can say, okay, that's going to be the most important assignment for the class. I need to be sure that I've set time for myself in my calendar so that I can work on that when those due dates arrive. But knowing those weights will help. It also is important to read that to understand what your attendance expectations are, what expectations there are for you in terms of turning in work, if late work's accepted or not. All of those things are listed in that syllabus, and that's why you need to read it that first day. And the reason being is there may be something in there that you can't abide by. And that way you find out the first day of class, and then you can say, oh, I can't do this. There's an assignment that's going to be due a week that I absolutely know I'm going to be out. I can't miss that day. I'm going to have to be out of class. There's no excuse for that. But I won't get that excuse, but maybe if I drop this class and find another class, they'll have a different due date for that assignment. It's a risk you have to take, but that's something that does come up from time to time. The syllabus will also tell you penalties for different infractions that you make. For example, in some classes, if you plagiarize an assignment, nobody should plagiarize, but if you're caught cheating or plagiarizing, you might fail the assignment. In other classes, you may be failed for the entire course. The syllabus will outline the details of those things so that you know what your expectations are. And that way, if you violate the contract, then you know what the violations, what the penalties are to be expected. You can't ever come in the middle of the semester and do something incorrect and then say, oh, well, I didn't know anything about it. And the professor will say, well, it was written in the syllabus, and it's your responsibility to have read it. If you didn't read it or pay attention to it, that's your fault. The onus or the guilt is on you for that. So, and sometimes penalties at college can be very severe. Like I said, you may fail an assignment. You might be failed for the course, or if it's a huge infraction, you could be failed and expelled from the entire college. So pay very careful attention to what the syllabus states. It tells you all about your rights, all about your expectations for the class, and also tells you all the things that you should and should not do in the course, all the acceptable and unacceptable things. The other thing that I would say is that you should read all of the course materials that are provided to you. And sometimes there are a lot of course materials given to you the first day of class. Take that first week to read through those. The instructor expects you to understand and have a good understanding of the materials that are provided. And as those materials are provided weekly, prepare yourself by reading those materials. Instructors aren't just giving work out for it just to float around and not ever be used. If they're giving it out, there's an expectation that you have read it. Once it's been given, it's assumed that you have read it. Can't tell you how many times I get later in the semester and students say, oh, I don't know, I don't remember reading that, I don't know where that is. And I'll say, go back and look at the student guide materials, go back and look at the information I handed out on the first day of class or in the first week of class. You should have read that and know where all that material, all that information is. Always expect that in college, the expectation is and the assumption is that the student has been given the material, therefore the student knows exactly what's expected, what's coming. And that's why you should also have all of your expected materials and bring them to class with you every class period. If you have a textbook, the textbook needs to come with you every day unless the professor or instructor says it's not needed for a particular day. But Your syllabus will say, here are the expected materials for the class. Here are supplemental materials for the course. Those are really crucial for your success. You want to be sure that you can obtain and purchase those items or rent them or do whatever is necessary to have them by the first week of class. And I understand sometimes financial aid gets in the way of things like that. You can speak to your professor about that. And definitely if there are issues, talk to your professor sooner rather than later. If there's a book that's got to be read by the third week of class and your financial aid isn't going to pay until that third week, so you may not get it, talk to your professor beforehand rather than waiting until the date of the test and then saying, oh, well, I didn't get that, my financial aid. The professor's not going to help you at that point. The earlier you inform an instructor of issues or problems that you're having or concerns or questions, the sooner they can help you and the more able they're going to be to help you. Because the longer you wait, the closer you get to a deadline or beyond a deadline and say, oh, I wasn't able to do that assignment because my financial aid hadn't kicked in and I couldn't afford the book. I have it now, so now can I take the test? The professor's going to tell you no way. And the reason being is because think about how long most teachers have taught and how many people, unfortunately, use excuses that aren't necessarily true just to be able to go back and do work that they missed because they just didn't feel like doing it when it was time to do it. So if you let someone know ahead of time and you have proof and evidence ahead of time that these are some issues that are going on, an instructor will be more willing to work with you and try to help you. But always bring your materials with you to class. Don't be the student who has to borrow a sheet of paper or has to borrow a pen or has to look on the book with a classmate. You want to have your own things. That way you can write, take your own notes, and you're always prepared. You have a better feeling about yourself and about the class if you have the materials that you need and you're able to use them as they're required. This is another important one. Follow all the instructions very carefully. Like I said, with reading the syllabus, reading the course materials, you need to be careful and concerned with how you read information. Take notes as you go. Have another little notebook that you write down things that must be done, things that you don't want to forget about. But definitely read all of the assignments that you're given. Every assignment that's assigned in college has a purpose. It's not necessarily busy work anymore. It's more designed for you to have something to do that is related to an assignment that comes later, a bigger assignment that comes later. And this is also very important. Read all of the directions and assignment criteria carefully and thoroughly. Every assignment will often have requirements associated with it. It's up to you to read those assigned requirements. And I'll give you some examples, or I'll give you one. I've had a student a number of years ago who, in my English class, would submit a paper every time we had an essay. The student submitted the essay, but the essay never met the minimum word limit. In every paper, so first essay, I say the paper has to be 600 words. The second essay had to be 800 words. The third essay, it had to be 1,000 words. So the student was always submitting 300 and 400 word papers that I kept failing, and I kept saying, read the instructions, read the criteria. It states clearly what the minimum requirements are for this assignment. Or you may have a situation where the paper has to have 4 or 5 sources, and the student submits a paper with no sources or only 1 or 2 sources. That ties the professor's hands. They have to fail you because you didn't follow the directions, and the directions are very important. So read the directions and assignment carefully and thoroughly. Know what is expected of each assignment so that you are sure that you're following the guidelines. You're staying within the bounds of what is being assigned. And the reason for that is because we're in college now, and assignments can also almost never be resubmitted. You have one chance to do it correctly. If the assignment is due the third week of class on Friday, if you don't have it due and it's not ready that day, you're not going to get a chance to go back and redo it. If you submitted and it was incorrect, the student who kept submitting the wrong papers, and I kept telling her every stage of the way, this is incorrect. You've got to submit a paper that at least meets the minimum requirement. If she came back at the end and said, "Oh, could I just turn those papers back in and make the work?" No, that's the reason we have deadlines. You have to submit it on time. It has to be done correctly. And details matter, and the mistakes are costly. College is a lot different from high school, where somebody said, "Oh, yeah, sure, go back and make that up and I'll give you the credit." That very rarely, if ever, happens in college. It's just not, because it's a more professional environment now. You have higher expectations of you as a student, as a responsible adult. And details, like I said, they matter, and it's very costly when you make those mistakes, and they can't often be recovered. That being said, if you read material, you read expectations, and you don't know what they mean, you aren't sure, ask the question immediately when you don't understand. If you don't understand something in week 1, don't wait until week 4 to say, oh, well, I didn't really know about that. Can I ask you about that now? Chances are the time has passed and you've already lost 4 weeks of not knowing something. And think about all the material, the work that you've missed, you've done incorrectly because you weren't sure and you didn't ask or come forward. Don't be afraid of coming forward. Always ask questions. Instructors would much rather answer questions and make statements or clarify information as early as possible so that you know what's going on. Because if you understand something, that is considered your problem if you don't raise it with the class, with the instructor. So never be afraid to ask those questions. If you don't understand something on the syllabus, if you don't understand something about the assignment criteria, always ask and inquire. If you do these things, it will help you be more prepared to receive the information in class and be more successful. The next item is professionalism, and I think this is another component that's very important to have and consider when you're moving into a college environment. It's how it's different from high school, where in high school, even though you're juniors and seniors and in your late teens, it's still sort of an idea that you're in a childhood mode and the teachers are in more of a parental mode. College is different. College is that we're both working adults and we're both you're treated like a responsible adult. There's an assumption that you're a responsible adult who knows how to handle himself or herself in a professional manner. And that's why you need to treat your class like it's your career. College for 4 years or for 6 years or for 2 years, however long you're taking college courses, is your career for that moment. Okay? So treat it with that professional atmosphere. You know, you want to attend classes regularly and you want to arrive on time. Think about the purpose of college. College is designed to prepare students for careers in what we call the middle class. You know, most of you, I'm assuming, who are watching this aren't Kennedys or Rockefellers or, you know, outrageously wealthy people. Most people who attend college, like myself, like everyone else, are part of the middle class. And college is designed to teach you, to indoctrinate you into a middle class way of life. This is what is expected. If you're successful in college and the requirements of college, you will be successful in a career that's designed for middle class living or upper middle class living, even upper class living. You know, if you even move higher into upper level management, these are still the basic skills that you will need to advance in all of those aspects of your life. But treat college like a career. And in a career, if you're working a job and you walk in the door 20 minutes late every day, how long do you think it's going to be before your boss fires you? How long is it going to be before your boss realizes this person has no concern for this job whatsoever? I don't think they're really being serious. You know, they're probably going to be fired soon. They're not going to be a successful employee. Success comes if you're there on time and if you attend regularly. If you're not there, you're not learning the material. The other thing is that because it is, you need to treat, because it is like a career, you should treat deadlines seriously as though your job depended on it, because it does. You know, think again, if you worked at an office and you had reports that were due, something that has to be completed by April the 10th, and you can't turn it in on time, you say, you know, you go to the boss on the 10th and say, oh, you know, some things happened in life and I'm not going to be able to turn that report in. You know, I just can't do it. Can I have until the 12th? But the shareholders want to see it on the 10th. How great do you think that makes you look? It doesn't. How likely are you to be able to get the extension to the 12th if the shareholders have been expecting it by the 10th and you walk in on the morning of the 10th and you can't produce it? Not. You're going to get fired or you're going to get written up. Same thing with college. If you can't turn in and produce the material, you're going to fail the course. If you fail the course, you have to repeat it. After so many repeats, in some classes, you don't get to take it again. So be sure that this is you're as professional as possible with your arrivals, your attendance, and your ability to produce the work when it's required and when it's due. Those are really important steps. Another thing is be respectful and courteous to everyone. And this one happens, some people make little infractions or they don't understand, and this, I think, should help you understand what that means. Always address your instructor correctly. And sometimes I run into this, and I talk to other professors and instructors, and they do as well. If an instructor has a PhD, you should refer to them as Dr. whoever, like Dr. Bruce. That's an aspect of being respectful. It's also an acknowledgement that that person holds a doctoral title. Those people should be referred to as doctors. They went to school for a long time. They want to be acknowledged as such. It changes their title. So be sure that you're addressing them correctly. If they have a PhD, they're no longer Mr. or Miss. They're Doctor. Instructors who have a master's degree or an MA or an MS, they can still be called Mr. or Miss. And one thing is that if you're not sure, always just say Professor so-and-so, Professor Bruce. And it's not necessarily a correct format, but at least it'll get you out of trouble if you're not sure if the person has a PhD or an MA. The way you can know is you can always look at the syllabus, because it will always list who your instructor is, and if they have the letters after their name, you'll know it's a PhD. If not, they'll have an MA. And then that will help you understand what you should say or what you should call them. Also look at how they sign documents. If they're sending out messages and they say, Mr. Bruce or Dr. Bruce, that will say, oh, well, that's how I'm supposed to refer to him or her. Keep that in mind, because it's very important to be respectful and to acknowledge, and it also shows that you're paying attention. One thing that I notice sometimes is I'll have email exchanges with students, and they'll start off calling me Mr. Bruce, and then I'll sign it Dr. Bruce, and then when they reply back to me, it's still Mr. Bruce again. And so, pay attention to those things. It's the little details that really help and show that you're paying attention. Similarly, treat your classmates like your coworkers, like if this is a job. Help and learn from one another. There are skills that you're going to find that your classmates have that you don't. There are skills that you're going to find that you have that your classmates don't. Work and share alike with one another to help each other. That's the purpose. We're all working together for the same common cause, to be successful students and pass this course. Be willing to exchange and consider views with your classmates that may differ from your own. Part of the college experience is that you're going to be introduced to a wide array of people who come from vast and different backgrounds. That's a beautiful thing. Embrace that. Listen to what other people have to say. Especially when you're talking about humanities classes like your sociologies, philosophies, your English courses, you're going to run into situations where you're going to talk about subject matter that you may not feel as comfortable about, or that you may disagree with. You may have a really staunch view on a particular subject, but don't let that view prevent you from listening to the other side and understanding why someone who has an opposing view may feel that way. Listen. Always listen, take in information, and consider what other people have to say. If you immediately shut down and throw up a wall, that's not helping you. It's not helping you engage your own brain and grow critically, become a better critical thinker. Because here's what's going to happen. If you listen to someone else's viewpoint, and it's not one that you necessarily agree with, one of a couple of things can happen. One is, I could listen to what you have to say, and maybe I think, we're not that far off, and here are the places where I think we just disagree in minor ways, and let's talk about that. Or maybe in major ways, but let's just talk about that and focus on those for a minute. You may have a conversation with someone with an opposing view, and you may decide, oh, I actually do agree with what you're saying, and I understand now why you haven't agreed with me, and now I think I understand where you're coming from. I think I believe what you think, actually, now. The reverse may happen. The person you're talking to may say, oh, get the same thing. I've thought these things for so long, but now I think differently. I agree with you. Also, what may happen is you listen to someone speak and you think, oh, I still don't agree with what you're saying at all, but what you're saying and the way you're presenting it to me is helping me understand better why I don't agree with you, why I think my version of my idea is more correct. But this is what happens, and this is the same as in a workforce, in a career. You may be in a work team that's assigned a huge project, and there's going to be 3 or 4 people butting heads at any given time over how this should be done, how a certain problem should be solved. And you're going to have an idea, Other people are going to have ideas. If you're all walled off and not willing to listen to one another's ideas and being stubborn, then there's no way you can all work together and cooperate. But if we all come together and figure out where are our likes, what are our differences, where can we agree, where do we disagree, how can we fix those disagreements, how can we compromise, I think that's where you're going to see work becoming stronger, better, and you gain a better understanding of who you are and who you are as a worker, who you are as a student, who you are as a person. So for that reason, listen to your coworkers, always be polite, be respectful. Some people will say things, nobody should say anything that is an attack on you. Don't take things personally, but don't attack others. But think about how the ideas can be improved upon or analyzed or criticized. That's what's necessary. That's what's professional. And similarly, treat emails as professional communications. Don't send text speak in an email. Don't, lowercase I for personal I, which should be capitalized, abbreviated words, emojis. Those aren't things that really are placed in emails that are professional in quality. Think about if you were in a job, you wouldn't send your boss or you wouldn't send the president of the company emails that are full of emojis and misspelled words that are abbreviated like text. Write out the words completely. Have whole sentences. Use formal addresses to begin the correspondence. Dear Dr. Bruce. Dear Mrs. Smith. Dear Dr. Jameson. Conclude an email with your name. Thank you. Say thank you or sincerely. John Adams. That is a professional email. The other thing is with a class, because every professor probably has 100 students or more each semester. So be sure when you're emailing that you identify yourself, but also identify the course that you're taking. Because if you're in Math 101, a teacher, an instructor, a professor may be teaching 3 classes of Math 101, and she may not know where you're located. If you just sat in your Math 101 class, there's a section number after that. Just I'm in your section 34 of your Math 101 class. That will help her narrow it down and look in her grades and see and look in the course material. So just think about that, but always try to have a professional attitude. If you're professional, people will be professional with you. And sometimes it seems broken down a little bit, or it seems like that can come across differently in email. We always say you can't read text sometimes for emotion. But if we all come from with a mindset of that we're acting professionally, we're conducting ourselves as professionals, then email communication, online communication won't be an issue. Because it's like, should I be offended by what? No, because this is a professional email. He wouldn't say that. She wouldn't do that. So I need to read this in a more professional tone. And I need to write in a more professional tone. Promptness. Promptness is another important component, because sometimes people don't realize how important being on time is. And I just mentioned that a little earlier about showing up on time, remaining in class the full time, arriving to class on time, not being late with deadlines. But you always want to be punctual. Show up on time. If you're supposed to do something at a certain time of day, if your class is at 11 o'clock, arrive at 11 o'clock. Be there a little early. Don't just walk in the door at the very last minute and drag your feet or come in 20 minutes late. You're going to miss material. You're going to miss information. But complete the required assignments as well by the due date. But don't wait until the last minute, because something always goes wrong, and instructors have heard every excuse in the book when it comes to that. So, it's sort of like the dog ate my homework excuse. Something's always, if anybody who waits, if an assignment is due, you have to upload it to this site by 10 p.m. And then, I start getting emails at 10:02. Oh, I wasn't able to submit that on time. I tried and tried, but I couldn't get in. And so I go back and look, and every other student were submitting at 9:57, 9:58, 9:59. You probably didn't do it because it turned off at 10 o'clock and you waited until the very last minute. And trust me when I say something will always go wrong if you wait until the last minute because you're rushed, something you're not expecting will happen, your computer will break down, any kind of thing. So always try to be a little early with things. Try to submit it a little ahead of time. And like I said, instructors have heard every excuse. Even I, sometimes I'll give students a pass maybe once if it sounds somewhat believable. But at the same time, I've heard every excuse in the book by now. And so has every other instructor. So keep that in mind. Be honest and truthful. Don't lie about something. Don't make up something. I used to tell students in my classes, You can't have 7 grandmothers that die in one semester. We only have so many. So think about the excuse that you're using. If it's valid, if there's a reason, then things can be done. But typically, if they're last-minute excuses, there's no reason for that. You should have submitted something on time. And if you know ahead of time that you're not going to make a certain deadline, talk to your professor ahead. If you know, in September that an assignment that's going to be due in October is something you're going to have to struggle with, that I'm going to be away that day, I'm going to be away that week, have a job commitment that week, I can't come in, I can't submit it. Make arrangements in September for what can happen. The instructor will work with you then, most likely, to turn in the work a little ahead of time, maybe turn it in the next day. But if you wait until that last minute and say, oh, I can't do it, could I get an extension? That's not going to happen. This is, again, going back to being professional. Professional people inform people ahead of time of problems they see coming down in the future. Now, I realize sometimes we do have last-minute emergencies that happen. But those things are rare, and when they do happen, they often and should come with paperwork. For example, if you collapse and have to be, God forbid, in a hospital, then you will have hospital paperwork and a doctor who can verify, yes, they were there. They were in the hospital at this particular moment. But at the same time, if you've collapsed at 9:55 and an assignment's due at 10 p.m., I'm going to say, well, why didn't you submit it 2 hours before that or the day before that? What was the issue before then that kept you from doing the work? So just be mindful and professional. Understand that deadlines do exist for a reason. Extensions are rarely given on assignments, so do not expect them. And this is another thing that happens. Sometimes I'll have a student who will attend for 3 or 4 weeks and will vanish for 3 or 4 weeks and then come back later and say, oh, can I just go back and make up all of that work that I just did? No, absolutely not. That's not what college is about. You have deadlines, you have expectations. If you don't submit the work when it's due, you can't just vanish and come back and think that you should be allowed to redo all the work with no other excuse. Now, if you were in the hospital again with a coma for that amount of time, yes, we can work on that. But just to say, I just couldn't decide if I was going to stay in college or not. But now I'm going to stay, so can I go back and make up all this work? No. Or, sometimes at the end of the semester, you'll get a student every now and again who will say, oh, I just realized I need this class or I'm going to lose my scholarship. Can I just go back and rework some of these major assignments and you give me credit? No. That's not how it works. That's not what responsible adults do. That's not how a job scenario plays out. If you don't show up for a job for 3 weeks and don't tell anybody where you are and what's happening, you don't have a job when you come back. If you try to walk back in the door, they're not going to give you your seat again. They've already replaced you with someone else. Think about that. Try to be professional and be professional in how you request things. If it sounds silly to you, I know I'm supposed to be here for these 3 weeks. I wasn't here, but I think I should be allowed to ask to redo all of this work that I didn't submit. That sounds silly, right? Give a silly check to it. That sounds ridiculous. Why would somebody allow you to do that? That's not the purpose of this. We're here to be professional and to learn. And your actions and inactions always impact your classmates in the class itself. I give an assignment where we have a peer review. And the peer review is where everyone shares papers with their classmates, and the classmates give feedback to help the students improve their work. Well, if you don't show up for peer review, if you're not there for that, you can't come a week later and expect to be able to redo that assignment because it's already happened. I can't recreate a peer review because that happened right before papers were due and papers have already been submitted. And so when you're not there, if you don't participate, somebody in the class is not getting the feedback they need from you. So that's why deadlines matter. Similar to that, all the other assignments are staged so that things are due at various times so that it prepares you for the next assignment and the next assignment. So if you miss assignment A, it's going to impact your assignment B, C, and D because all those things are, all the assignments are build-ups to whatever major assignment we're working toward. And the other reason that deadlines matter is that you have to be respectful and think your instructor has a life outside of the class too. That's why assignments are given, major assignments are made, and once they're submitted, an instructor is going to take a certain amount of time over the next week to grade all those assignments. If you're just turning in papers whenever you feel like it, an instructor is just sitting there waiting for you to send a paper in so they can grade it. That's not fair to them. Everybody wants a life. I want to leave school someday without having work on my mind or without having to worry about grading papers. So that's why I say assignments are due this date. I will try to have it back to you by the following whatever date. And that's what I work towards doing. And if you're trying to submit something after that, it's like, I've already graded that work. Now I'm doing some other things. So be mindful of that. We all have to work together. An instructor is going to be respectful of you and probably won't overload you with too much work. And even if they do, they're not going to throw assignments at you that you weren't expecting. So do the work as it's required. Respond to communications when you receive them. If I send an email out to you, it's typically because I expect a response back from you. So respond. Don't wait around. I always try to respond to emails within 24 hours. I try to check my mail at least every 24 hours except over the weekends. And I say that in my syllabus. But, just be mindful that communications are important and they should be responded to. Never procrastinate. Anytime you're waiting around until the last minute, all you're doing is just putting off all this worry and guilt. And I'm guilty of doing this myself, of waiting until the end, and then you just I worry the whole time up until I absolutely have to do it, and then I do it, and then I have just a few minutes to breathe freely before the next assignment's due. If you follow the course materials as they're given, you won't have to procrastinate. You're just working on things gradually as we work through. But you can't wait until the last minute. Don't wait and start doing work the night before if it's due the next day. You're often never going to finish that. Think about all the reading, the requirements, and especially if you're required to participate in a discussion board, you can't do everything on a Sunday night if it's due Monday morning. You're not giving yourself enough time. You're not being fair to your classmates. Again, this is why your actions or inactions impact your classmates. They're waiting on your response to a discussion board so that they can reply again to you. So keep that in mind. And all these things sort of work together. All of these items really fall under performance in a general way, but there are also other aspects of performance to consider. Follow the syllabus schedule carefully. Every syllabus will list in it a calendar of events. Here's what's due on what date. Read that in advance and map out each week how you plan to complete your assignments. Map out study time. You're not going to be able to be successful if you don't have study time built into your life. It's going to have to be done. There's got to be time you need to work, to write, to review the information. So be sure you're doing that. Remember, you're responsible for doing your work and following the course. Most instructors aren't nurturers. Like I said, it's not like the high school situation where you're still considered sort of that child mindset, children and parental teacher figures who are going to make sure you're on task, assure you every day that, don't forget we have this test that's going to be due on Friday. We're going to take on Friday. This paper's due next Monday. That's not going to happen in college. It's simply expected once the syllabus is handed out, you see that it's due. We'll make references of it a few times in class moving up towards it, but nobody's going to check on your progress. You have to be the person who motivates yourself. It's simply expected since you're in college that you're going to do those things. And again, waiting until the last minute is a guaranteed way to fail an assignment for the entire course. Because if you just wait around and procrastinate all the time, you're not going to be successful in the class. I don't know many people who do that. And typically what happens is they wait around, they end up not doing it. And once you miss a major assignment in college, look at the values of things. Sometimes your opening essay grade, the first essay you submit, is 20% of your course grade. If you don't submit that paper, that means you get a 0. That means you've lost 20% of your course grade. That means that the highest grade you can make now in the class, if you earn a 100 on every other assignment the rest of the semester, the highest grade you can make on that in the class at that point is a 79C. Okay, most classes consider a C to be a 70 to a 79, and a 70 would be the lowest possible grade that you can earn to pass the class without having to repeat it. Because in general, most courses, if you make a D or an F, you have to repeat the course. So once you've failed to turn in that first essay, you've lost those 20 points off of your opening grade. The highest grade you can now make is a 79, and that's if you earn a 100 on every other assignment going the rest of the semester. That also means that you only have a 9-point margin of error to pass the class. Isn't that horrible? Do you think, and if you've already missed the first assignment, it's not really likely you're going to make 100 on every other assignment after that. It's just historically, in my experience with students who've done this, that it doesn't happen. But also, you only have that little 9-point stretch. So if you lose an equivalent of 9 points throughout the semester, then you've failed the class. So set yourself on good footing. Always turn in the work. Don't wait until the very last minute. And remember, too, that your best is all that's expected. You know, a lot of students come in worrying about the grade. Oh, I've got to make an A in this class, a B in this class. Worry less about earning a specific grade and more about obtaining the knowledge being shared with you during the lesson. The grade's going to take care of itself. If you're absorbing the information that's coming to you, you're asking questions when you need to, you're contributing, you're participating, chances are you're going to pass a course. It may not be with the top grade in the class. It may not be the grade that you want in the class, but I think if you're contributing and you're trying your best, you're going to make the best possible grade you can earn. You know, and that's all that's expected. That's all you can expect from yourself. But if you get bogged down in I have to make an A, I have to make a B, I have to make a B, then you're focusing more on numbers and making that B and not really paying attention to the knowledge that's being shared. This is information in most of these classes that you will use the rest of your life. The information you find in English class helps you write papers and reports that will benefit you and teach you how to write in techniques that you need for college, for writing term papers and higher level courses, but it also helps you with reports and documents that you'll be creating in your business field and whatever career field you're moving into. So think about all of these things and let these ideas help you as you move forward. I hope this has been helpful. I hope that you use these skills. Feel free to come back to this and look, take notes. But I just think these are key components that are very helpful and useful to any student.